It's hard to believe we're here together on the last night of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah. In it, I hope, inshallah, that you've experienced many blessings. But we end this month with a little bit of sadness for our brothers and sisters around the world in different places, particularly in Palestine and Syria, where this has been maybe a particularly challenging Ramadan for them. And they may not be so joyful on the Eid. So let us keep them in our hearts and prayers for the next few days. But we are still grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to see another Ramadan. This final juz of the Quran, very hard to choose from because it is filled with some of the most powerful surahs that all of us are very familiar with. We recite day after day in our regular prayers. So I will just focus on a few. As many of you already know, the verses, so many of them call upon mankind to witness nature, God's creation, as the sign of God's existence, whether it's the sun, or the moon, or the night, or the day, or the universe and its creation, or the creation of life, or bringing life to the earth after everything is dead, as a symbol of what God is capable of. He warns us many times of the final hour, and is very descriptive of the hereafter, of both heaven and hell. In talking about the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the earth as we know it will be in a state of convulsion, with earthquakes, with the sea and the ocean boiling over, with the mountains turned to dust. And I feel there's a symmetry here in what he's calling on mankind to do within society. He's calling on us to create a new social order, one that is so dramatically different from what was the status quo at the time, that it results in a convulsion of society, disrupting what people knew, so that those who were neglected, ignored, discarded, and abused now work to hold the keys to the salvation for the new Muslim Ummah. So the first example, God gives voice to the weakest member of society. When in Surah At-Takwir, when he is listing all the signs of the Day of Judgment, all of these natural calamities that will happen. And then he says on that, one of the things that will happen on that day is that the female infant that was buried alive will ask for what crime she had been killed. And sometimes when we recite these things, the poetic nature of it makes us sort of forget exactly what we're saying. But imagine, especially as we see images of children, innocent children who are killed, that when parents deliberately bury their female child, she will rise on the Day of Judgment and ask the question that has no answer: for what crime was she killed? So God gives a voice to this baby that couldn't speak very early on in the revelation of the Quran. But one of the most important surahs that really embodies what I'm trying to talk about, this intertwining of faith and responsibility, is Surah Al-Ma'un, where God says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم فلا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. He's telling us the kind of person who turns his back on religion is the one who is harsh to the orphan and does not feed the poor. But it's not saying he doesn't feed the poor. He doesn't create a movement to feed the poor. He doesn't do anything to urge others to make change. This kind of person, even though he may be praying, his heart is absent while he's praying, and he's only doing it to be seen of men. Of course, it could be a she as well. And then deny all assistance to their fellow men. This concept of urging others to take care of those who are poor is also repeated in Surah Al-Fajr, where God is again talking to mankind. And he says, but as for man, whenever his sustainer tries him by his generosity, letting him enjoy a life of ease, he says, my sustainer has been generous towards me. But when he tries him by straightening his means of livelihood, he says, my sustainer has disgraced me. But nay, nay, you are not generous toward the orphan, O man, and you do not urge one another to feed the needy. In the same similar word, وَلَا tahaduna, so you do not urge each other to feed the needy. You devour the inheritance with devouring greed, and you love wealth with boundless love. So we can see then that this notion of having to urge one another to take care of those who are in need is really part of the message. It's not just about giving something to someone in need, it's creating so much change that you turn society upside down. And finally, in Surah Al-Balad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the affirmative. When He says to in this surah, what is al-aqaba? The word aqaba has been defined as a steep uphill climb, or the mountains that you have to go over. But really it's a form of a barrier. And it's that barrier that stands between you and the happiness of the hereafter. What will it take for you, for all of us, to cross over there? And here He tells us, it is the freeing of a slave, which we like to think of in past terms, but today we know that modern slavery exists. It's the feeding upon a day of one's own hunger of an orphan near of kin, those closest to you, that is, and of a needy stranger lying in the dust. When you think of that image, a person in the dust, as low as you can possibly go. So for you to get to the other side, you have to free a slave, feed and care for an orphan, or feed somebody you don't even know who's at the lowest point of their entire life. And then finally He says in this verse, in this surah, and these will be those who have attained to faith, وَتَوَسَّوْا بِالصَّبْرِ وَتَوَسَّوْا بِالْمَرْحَمَةِ. These are people who enjoin one another in patience and in compassion. So again, it's this notion that we are functioning as a group together to do this, because it's not just about me feeling good about myself feeding somebody who's poor, it's me changing and transforming society so that you don't have poverty, and you don't have orphans, and you don't have people in need. So in the end, our spirituality must be translated into action that addresses the social ills, because we must not and cannot be oblivious to the suffering of others. So as I said, this is really about how we motivate each other to do what is right. If we do that, we can elevate society as a whole and eliminate these horrible things that exist today, whether it's modern-day slavery or poverty or illiteracy or what have you. I don't have to tell you about how bad things are. It sometimes saddens me to think that after 1400 years or more since the message of the Quran was revealed, the Muslim world really has fallen short of transforming society, of creating that convulsion that I talked about at the beginning, given all of the blessings that have been bestowed on us and our communities over these years. So let us, as ourselves, as a community, thinking about the year ahead, make a commitment to putting our faith into action on behalf of the hungry, the poor, the weak, and the downtrodden. And inshallah, Allah will give us the blessing of living to see another Ramadan, and that we can do as much as we can to help our brothers and sisters have the same blessing in their own lives. Thank you.